Hello and welcome. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for being part of this Microsoft Reactor live stream event. We are happy to have Marat Abdulin, a software engineer, joining us from the Fluent UI team at Microsoft Prague. Today, he will be covering keyboard navigation, focus management, and relative insanity. The final session of our Fluent UI 4-part series. This session will run for approximately 30 minutes with times for questions at the end. If you've missed any of the previous sessions, they are available on our YouTube channel. I'll drop the link into the chat momentarily. Definitely tune in if you have interest in exploring other Fluent UI topics. If this is your first time joining us for a live session, please note that for Teams Live, there is a slight delay in the feed from presenter to audience. So when we respond, there might be a little bit of lag time. As Marat is planning to save the questions for the end of the session, do drop your questions in early just so that he's able to get to them right at the conclusion of his presentation. Otherwise, again, with that delay, we might not see all of them before the session ends. Also to note, this recording will be available as well on our YouTube channel in just a few days. And then one last mention, at the conclusion of this session, I'll be sharing a feedback survey. Please, if you have the opportunity, do fill it out. We use that to curate future topics and create, more engaging content based on your interests. So do take the opportunity to take advantage of that survey. At this time, I will pass the mic over. Thank you so much, Marat, for taking the time and doing this session. You and your team both, we really appreciate it. We've gotten a lot of awesome feedback about this series, so thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Do you hear me?
Yep, I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I would assume so. Thanks, and hello everyone, and thank you for joining. I will start with the disclaimer. I like conferences in general, but this is my first online conference experience, and I'm not yet decided if I like the feeling. Also, to remove you from the background noises in the form of screaming children, I have come to the office, and to do that I had to pass the coronavirus test. The probe has certainly scratched my brain, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but the whole situation certainly might have affected me. And you can already get the actual state of me from the title of my talk. So let me switch to the next slide. Given the not so popular topic, I believe there are not so many of us here today, and we can have a warm Valve atmosphere of a startup. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. We will try to get to them after the presentation. I will be talking about keyboard navigation, which is a mandatory part of the much wider accessibility topic. We want to build applications usable by everybody, including people with disabilities. That requires extra work and extra consideration. By the way, not all disabilities are permanent. Your cat might destroy your mouse. You might break an arm, and you would still want to be able to use the computer. So let me go to the next slide and enable the browser. So let's switch to the actual topic. I will be showing things in the browser, and something might certainly go wrong. Please be gentle. Here we see a typical web application, pretty simple, several actionable elements. You can click them and they will do something. In like in the case when my mouse and trackpad are broken, I should be able to move between the buttons in this application using the tab key. And I should be able to trigger the actions for every button using Enter or Space key. And in this particular example, I certainly cannot. Like I can move through some of the buttons, but not through all of them. Like this is because we live in the era when every grocery store builds a design system with the sleek custom controls. Let's go to the next part. Fortunately, this particular issue is easy to fix. HTML provides the tab index attribute. We can make any element tabbable using it. Here, the same example with the tab index, so every button is focusable. But that is not enough. When I hit Enter or Space on these custom buttons, there is no reaction because they only handle mouse clicks. And like the HTML button, which is next to my custom button, has a thing called default action, which will call the click event handler when Enter or Space are pressed. So we have to handle that. It is pretty simple, just a little bit of JavaScript code. We also need to add role attribute to the custom focusable element so that the screen readers could communicate the meaning of that element to the screen reader users. Or better, when possible, we should base custom controls on the native ones, which have these default actions already. The screen readers, like a little bit about the screen readers. The screen reader is a tool which helps people with limited vision to understand what is on the screen. And the whole screen reader topic needs another set of presentations and will not be covered here, but I will mention a few points about the screen readers later. So let's go to the next one. Okay, here we see a more typical web application. We have some buttons, we have a list of things, and we have the contents part. We've added tab index to all actionable elements. What happens next? When I start tabbing through the application, I need to press tab a lot of times to get to the contents part. The problem is that from the HTML perspective, the tab index attribute is pretty much all we have. Of course, there are some controls like select and various types of inputs provided by HTML, but you practically cannot give them a custom look and custom contents. So let's go next. Another thing in our in our armor is JavaScript. So let's do some simple custom handling, and the result might look like this. We treat the list as one tabbable element. When I hit tab in the list, the focus goes outside. The same if I tab backwards, so only one item of the list is being focused with the tab navigation. And I switch between the items using arrow keys. Nice, but something is missing. When the list is scrolled like here, and I tab from outside, the contents of the list get scrolled to the first item, or when I tap backwards, it gets scrolled to the last item. And in many scenarios, this is fine. In many other scenarios, though, that adds confusion. You are no longer seeing items you saw before. And in the modern days, the list might be virtualized. You might be adding more items as you scroll. So scrolling to the first item in the DOM might cause a bunch of problems and confusion. What else? We have just handled arrow keys, but there are page up, page down, home, and end keys on the keyboard. Those should also work. So let's go next. And it is getting a little bit more complicated, but it certainly is getting better. When I tap forward now, I land on the first visible item. When I tap backwards, I land on the last visible item. When I press page up, page down, or home end, they work really nice. In some other cases, we might require a bit different behavior. We might want to remember last focused items in the list. And when we tap backwards to the list, or when we go to the list again, we want to go not to the first or last item, but we want to go to the last focused item. So it's getting more and more complicated, especially when we consider a list might change, and the previously focused item might go away, for example. But I suppose we're still doing fine. Let's go next. And we will add a little more realness to our application. What if our list items have actionable elements inside? One of the ways we can deal with it is like this. I tap to the list item, then I tap through every actionable element inside one list item, then I tap outside. The same thing when I tap backwards. And I can still move between the items using arrow keys. And let's go next. And depending on the situation, another way of handling it might be better. Like the list behaves like before, it is an atomic list. So we tap through it only once, like this. But then we hit enter to go inside the actionable items inside every list item. And in some cases, we might even want to trap focus inside, so that while I'm inside the list item, I keep tabbing and the tab goes in circles. Then I hit escape to exit the tab item, the list item, sorry, and like it's just a normal atomic list. So it's getting more and more complicated, but we are still doing fine, aren't we? Let's go next. And actually, the groups of focusable elements we had before might also be nested. That is a simplified example of what every second application looks like these days. We have a list of news posts, and we tap through that list just once. That's pretty cool. We switch between the news posts using the arrow keys. Inside every post, we have the contents and we have the comments section. And we likely don't want to tap through every comment. So this is a list of focusables inside the list of focusables. Here, if I start tabbing through I go to the first item in the comment section, then I go outside. So we have nested groups of focusable elements. It's getting more difficult, but we are not done yet. A typical part of a typical application is a modal dialog. It looks like this. Not really hard, but it needs to be handled properly. Without special handling, if you keep tabbing, the focus will go to the buttons under the modal dialog. So you need to trap it inside. It is not that simple though. The majority of the solutions I've seen are trapping the focus forever, like we do here in the list item. That means if I want to go to the browser's address bar to change the page for some reason, I cannot do that without closing the modal dialog first. Here we have considered that situation, and I can go to the address bar from the modal dialog just fine, but that adds more complexity. Another pretty critical issue is that it is not enough to just trap the tab key navigation. We need to make sure that the rest of the application is hidden from the screen readers. Otherwise, the screen reader users will still be able to go under the modal dialog. I will mention the screen readers a little bit later. The next thing to consider is where the focus goes when you open the dialog. I have this red focus indicator, which is visible only when I'm tabbing and not visible when I'm using mouse to make less visual noise when it's not needed. So, like, see, this button is focused now. I hit enter and the focus goes to the first button of the modal dialog. That is something we need to handle, as it does not happen automatically. But it is not enough to always go to the first button of the dialog. If I open the dialog using the mouse, the red indicator will not be visible like this. And because I'm using the mouse. And when I will press tab, the focus indicator will appear on the second button, and it will be confusing. So we need to make sure that the dialog is open. If the dialog is opened with the mouse, our first tab actually moves us to the first element. That is another bit of complexity to the whole thing. And how do we detect that we're in the keyboard navigation state? A pretty simple approach is to handle the tab key press, and if it is pressed, we set the keyboard navigation set to true. If the mouse is used after it, we set it back to false. And unfortunately, that's not enough too. The screen readers have a thing called virtual cursor mode, which means that the screen reader moves you through the elements of the application with the screen reader shortcuts, not with the tab keys. So tab key is not involved, and there is no ability to intercept these shortcuts and detect them and customize the behavior of these shortcuts. So we need to consider that too. And I suppose at this point, all our focus management workarounds are pretty mind-blowing, and we are not done yet. What should happen when the modal dialog closes? What should happen when the currently focused element disappears from the application? We call that situation focus goes to the body. It might be pretty distracting. You have been in the middle of the application and now you are nowhere. This is especially inconvenient for the screen reader users because they have to start going through the application from the beginning. So what do we do here? When the modal dialog closes, we focus the button that has opened it, like this. But what if the button is gone? What if you have opened the modal dialog from the pop-up menu and this menu is not there anymore? So we can track the focus history, the history of focused element, and we can try to find the most recently focused element from that history, which is still available. Or we can specify some default focusable element in some cases. Likely in many cases we can do both, and we should do both depending on the exact situation. And there is a vast amount of corner cases to consider here. What else? Another very convenient feature the application might have is the keyboard shortcuts. For example, in the chat application, it makes sense to provide a shortcut to focus the chat message input. Then what also can add complexity? What if the application is using iframes? What if the iframes are not from the same domain and they don't have direct access to each other? We might be in a situation like that, and we might need to handle that as well. The focus indicator, this red outline I have here, is also a problem. HTML and CSS give us one, but we can extend it, we can to some extent customize it using CSS, but that native indicator the browser provides is getting cropped if you put a focusable element inside the container with overflow hidden. In many cases, it means that you will see only a part of that focus indicator, or you will not see it completely. And the focus indication must be very visible. Not all people with limited vision use screen readers. What makes it all an even bigger problem? From the application development perspective, we want to have a separation of concerns to make the code maintainable. The modal dialog component should not know what is under it. It is a standalone component. The list should know that it is inside another list. If we interconnect all these things together on the application level, we get an extremely unmaintainable spaghetti. I will attempt to switch to the next slide. Okay, so what do we do? We've gone through many things of various painfulness, and recently we have been working on an idea that the application should actually not do all these crazy things. The browser should. Imagine, for example, that you don't have tab index attribute and you have to implement the support for it completely from scratch. That is insane, but it's pretty much the situation we have with the modern complex web applications regarding the keyboard navigation. So we want the browser to support it. There should be a similar to tab index attribute to indicate, for example, a group of focusable elements and to specify the desired keyboard navigation behavior for it, so that the application just sets that attribute on a DOM node and everything works automatically. The browsers are getting better. The modal dialog handling, for example, should be easier in the recent versions using ARIA modal attribute. But the browser still doesn't do it all. And we still want to ship applications and make them better and better than ever. So we pretend that the browser can do it. We are building a completely framework agnostic tool that works on the low DOM level as close to the browser as possible. This tool is called Tapster because it is the tab index on steroids. And it pretty much works like this. Let me try to open the DevTools. Focus this one for you. So I specify an attribute on the element, and this element automatically behaves like the group of Focusables. If I have many of these elements in the row, the arrow keys navigation works automatically. Similar things for the modal dialog. I specify just one data attribute and it automatically is being handled like the proper modal dialog. I would mention a word of warning. It is an open source thing, but don't use it yet, because it is such a bleeding edge at the moment. You risk becoming more miserable than you were before, and I would likely not have a resource to cancel you. At this point, it's being developed with the single intention in mind to fix Microsoft Teams application, because we are really far from optimal in the keyboard navigation perspective there, and we want to make it better. And it is changing quite fast and it lacks documentation. So if we are successful with that effort, eventually a version 1.0 will be released, which means that it is ready. Also, this tool could be a proof of concept for our future talks with the browser makers, because as I mentioned before, we actually should not have the tools for that. We should have the browser support for all these focus management scenarios. So let me go to the next slide. One note on the screen readers. The screen readers support is the next level of complexity, and unfortunately it does not come for free. Here I have put a simple abbreviation of that message in Comic Sans so that you could memorize it more easily. It's really non-trivial, and if you are not sure that if your application is accessible or not, then it is not accessible. So mind the screen readers, they are really important. But yeah, we are not covering them here, but eventually I think we will come to that. One thing though about the screen reader I still want to mention. I didn't talk about them much, but this one is really important. Whenever you build an application, the visual order of elements must match the DOM order of elements. I have already mentioned that the screen readers have the visual cursor mode. They can move focus with the screen reader shortcuts, and they don't give a damn about your JavaScript logic, and it is not possible to intercept the screen reader shortcuts. I will give one good example from our past. We had a virtual list component in Skype, the one that shows the list of conversations. This list gets updated quite often, and when somebody sends you a message, the conversation item goes on top. Somebody has had a pretty bright idea that to reduce the number of DOM updates, we can sort the items once, and then use the CSS translate property to reorder them properly. It wasn't just reducing the DOM update, it was also allowing to easily, nicely animate the transitions. So when somebody sends you a message, it smoothly goes on top in an animated way. Very neat solution, but nobody was thinking about the screen readers at that point. And when the screen readers move the focus, they don't care about JavaScript, they don't care about CSS, they operate purely on the DOM level. So we ended up rewriting that virtual list component completely. So even if we are custom handling tab navigation, we still need to make sure that the UI order matches the DOM order, regardless of how good we are with moving things using CSS. And this is probably it for today. Thank you very much. I hope you have learned something new. I hope I have not scared you away from making accessible applications, and that we will all boldly go where no one has gone before with making things available to the rest of humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was great. We did have one question that come in, which you can review, and if you'd like to answer, it was, wouldn't you use CMD +1 to go to the address bar? I guess as general questions, how much should one rely on navigation versus hotkeys?
Well, I don't think there is one good answer, because keyboard shortcuts are really great, but you cannot assume that the one who uses the application knows the shortcuts already. So it takes time and it takes effort, and it takes a bit of memorization to learn the shortcuts. If somebody uses the application really often, they eventually will learn the shortcuts. But if they use the application occasionally, you cannot expect them to know the shortcuts. So there should be a standard, straightforward way to move out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we can give it a few more minutes to see if any other questions come in, but for now, I'm going to share my screen quickly and just show the Reactor slides here just momentarily. So just bear with me a second. That should... Just a second here, let's do that. So if anybody has any last minute questions, do feel free to drop them into the chat. Now is the opportunity. And while we wait for those questions to come in, I'm just going to quickly run through a couple of things. So if you are joining us from outside of the Reactor community, you heard about this session from a friend or on a quick search online, you came across it, do consider joining the Reactor. We offer free content to the developer and startup community. So we are definitely, it's all free. So if you are trying to learn or expand your knowledge or just interested in a topic, we cover a broad range of subjects. Check out our YouTube video station for any past sessions recorded. Visit us at either microsoftreactor.com or on Meetup to see our current listings and calendar of upcoming events. We are an international program with locations around the world, so we have sessions running at various time zones, morning, noon, and night for you locally. So definitely check out what we have coming up, and if interested, do register. We also have If you don't want to have to get alerts on a daily basis or have to check in on the calendar, we have an email sign up, aka.ms/reactor email sign up, which we send a month in advance of any session. So whatever we have on the calendar already for the following month, we'll send out in one bulk email. We don't spam you. We just send one email once a month with any of our content that's coming up that's localized to you. You just enter your local like zip code or address, and you'd get anything that's within that region. I dropped in the chat a feedback survey. If you have the opportunity, we greatly appreciate it. The event code is 13003, which you'll need if you're submitting that survey, just to let us know what you're referencing, which topic. And that is it. I think, Murat, I don't think we had any new questions come in. I think the material you covered was great. I really, personally, as a non-technical person, enjoyed the slide and the contents. You had me laughing the whole time, so that was a pleasure. You did a great job with kind of simplifying a lot of that material and making it very understandable, in my opinion. So thank you again. Thank you for taking this time putting this together. And thank you to the audience for attending and being a participant with us at this.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you very much to the people who attended.
Yeah, and then so at this time I will end the session. Thank you all, and tune in to the next one.